And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the naked city, the city of 1,000 stories. But there used to be 9 million stories. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition _radio, and of course the mothership, coalitionradio.us. We've got 3 hours planned tonight. In our first hour, with our guest in studio, we're going to be talking about Providence, LaProv, the Renaissance city, and building bridges. In the 8 o'clock hour, we'll have Maya Moreno, see if I can pronounce that properly. She is an activist for sex worker rights, based down south in the New York City area. She's going to be talking about her life as an undocumented citizen and the continuing challenge of her activism. And then in the 8 o'clock hour, as we call it here, this Libertarian Hour, we're going to be talking about the Radical Libertarian Caucus and the Libertarian Party Statement of Principles. So let's get right down to it. Joining me is in studio, and nice enough to come down on a Friday night, is a frequent offender and someone new to the coalition. So introduce yourselves. And both of these folks, I would call them serial activists, and that is a compliment. They're involved in a variety of organizations, and so there's sometimes they come on, and well, quite frankly, the areas that we discuss can morph from one to another seamlessly in the conversation. But today we've got an agenda, we've got business to conduct. So why don't you reintroduce yourself to the coalition audience?
So, Sharon Steele, president of the Jewelry District Association and president of Building Bridges, and as Pat says, a frequent offender.
And I'm the new guy in town, Olin Thompson. I'm the chairman of Building Bridges and a board member of the Jewelry District Association.
All right, well, and again, thanks for coming in tonight. So Sharon comes in on every couple of months, really just to update us on what's going on in the Jewelry District. And of course, there's 38, I don't know, what do we call Fane anymore? 38 Fane?
38 Tower.
38 Tower, thank you. 38 towers that we're going to talk about a little bit. So kind of let's start out, first of all, explain to folks your role, both of you, in sort of downtown Providence life, your commitment to it, and actually, just as importantly, how you got involved.
Wow. Okay. Well, we got involved because we both live and work in the Jewelry District. I've been involved with the Jewelry District since mid-90s, and Olin certainly has been involved as long as that. So what we like to do is talk about the fact that we are here to improve quality of life and to literally promote economic development in our hood so that it is a place to live, work, and play in Providence.
So quality of life issues are probably a very, very important part of your daily portfolio.
Correct. And probably the activism started with trying to root out the bad nightclubs in the area. Mm-hmm. So we started with 10 of them. We're down to a couple, let's say. So, you know, the moral of that story is either play ball and play by the rules, or we're just going to have to close you down.
No, that's interesting because one traditionally, now you're talking about the Jewelry District or more?
I'm talking about the Jewelry District.
One wouldn't traditionally associate them at this point with it being a nightclub district. I know that there was a reggae club there was a shooting at that was closed a few years ago. That property lay dormant actually for quite a while, and now has reopened as a nightclub. What are some of the issues that you've run into, and specifically which clubs?
Well, first of all, the nightclub you're talking about, the reggae club, it was in my building. Mm-hmm. I live above it, basically. And it started out as a pretty good restaurant.
Right.
The owner sold the restaurant to someone else. The restaurant didn't flourish, mm-hmm. and they evolved into this reggae club, which brought in not the people we're used to seeing in the neighborhood, which was fine, but the violence and the other problems started working on it. So I've been accosted at night when people were there and I'm trying to come into my building. But they basically went out of business because of financial mismanagement. And now we have a new club there called Askew, which we're quite happy with. They seem to have the kind of clientele and the kind of programming that brings in a nice, quiet crowd. So we're really happy with that. As a general statement across the jewelry district, yeah, we had quite a few. And one by one, they basically moved out because of our activism at the Board of Licenses and just putting pressure on in the neighborhood.
Right. Well, what was interesting about the prior club was kind of a unique business model because you essentially had two proprietors in one building.
Yes.
You had and I'm not sure who subcontracted to whom. It was kind of an experiment gone awry. You had the restaurant being run by one people and the nightclub being run by the other.
Well, basically, the restaurant owner owned and still owns the physical condominium and leased it to, at that point, the Fat Squirrel. And thus, that was the entity that went down the tube, shall we say, and the shooting certainly helped it go on its way.
Right. Now, how many of those buildings like that are set up as a condominium as opposed to a conventional, say, industrial building or, say, industrial lofts with, at-rent space in the bottom?
I would say most of the, if not all, of the classic red brick mill buildings have gone condominium. And for the most part, those are residential. So we think there's about 600 people sleeping in the jewelry district every night. And most of those are in those converted mill buildings.
We'll make it easy for you. There are four basic mill buildings. 150 Chestnut, which is the Duran building. 116 Chestnut, which is the Hedison building. 95 Chestnut is a rental model, another brick building. And then there's the Imperial Place, which is really three buildings where COV is located.
Okay.
And then there's a very small building at the corner of Ship and Richmond. And those basically comprise the entire residential and mixed-use condominiums.
I think it's important, Pat, to notice that when one of those buildings or condos goes on the market, it moves pretty quickly. So there's high demand for residential space in the jewelry district, and we're quite pleased about that trend.
Right, and that's interesting because if you compare that to some of the truly downtown, down city Providence buildings, I don't think they've had that kind of success, have they?
They have in the rental market, certainly. The rehabilitation, historic rehabilitation that Buff Chase has done and continues to do it has been met with extraordinary success. So his buildings are pretty full up.
As someone who you folks are intricately involved in a sense managing a district, do you prefer ownership? Do you prefer rentals, or is it immaterial?
I actually prefer a mix. I think it's good to have a mixture of ages, of interests, with ethnic groups. So we've got a solid base of owners, but we also have currently and coming online a number of rental units.
Right.
So I'm really encouraged by the mixture of people coming in and the mixture of people we see partaking of the nightlife in the district.
Do you see, is the housing stock increasing in your district?
Yes.
Well, there's help me.
There, parcel 30, which is next to 95 Chestnut Street, is about to have another 100 units that will come online literally at the beginning of next year. And River House, which you would know sort of as a Davol Square location.
Right.
So it's between Davol Square and the river. That comes online literally June 1st. They are 50% rented, I am here to tell you. So there is still very much a demand in our district.
And so Davol Square is considered part of the jewelry district now?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I remember when I moved to Rhode Island, Davol Square was being marketed as really as a shopping mall.
Yes.
Right.
And was it Benetton or Laura Ashley, I think, had a store there?
Laura Ashley.
It was Laura
Ashley.
Ashley, Talbot's,
Right.
City Lights, if you want to go back that far.
Right. And the piano bar.
The piano bar.
What happened? Any that you can discuss?
Well, here's what I can say. It was a financial challenge shall we say. And at the end of the day, something has to be financially feasible.
Right.
So they have been having difficulty, I'd say, probably in the last year.
Yeah, because I would imagine one of the challenges in the district is we're about to enter the quiet period, if you will. You've got to be able to weather and this is someone who's an outsider, but you have somewhat of an exodus in the city now. Was Brown's graduation this weekend?
Yeah.
Memorial Day.
And then a few days after that, RISD is graduating.
Following week, right.
And so you have this mass exodus of students who represent significant buying power
Correct.
in the city.
But we also have the School for Professional Studies from Brown.
Right.
And that has an international audience, and that brings in people in the summer.
Okay.
And Brown has done an amazing job of with their summer programming. So Brown has become not just an academic year institution.
Interesting, and because that's what I was sort of going with in terms of residential versus renting. Essentially, all of these different institutions that are opening up and expanding are providing a hedge to investors in the area and to the community at large. And tough question. I don't know if you can get your arms in terms of specifics. I'm looking for generalities here. My contention has always been that Brown, RISD, JWU in particular, primarily because of their central downtown location, are an irreplaceable economic engine. And I'm an extremist. These are my words, not yours. I've often said that without those institutions here, we might look a lot like Bridgeport. There's a tremendous amount of money that just pours into.
I think you've got pure money, but there's also, it brings a lot of young, vibrant people here. And that's just more than money. So it brings excitement. It brings their parents here.
Right.
So, I think one of the reasons we have great tourism here, and hopefully growing, is the fact that we have a lot of people being introduced to Providence because of their kids are at those institutions. And, and tourism, I believe, is something we should be investing in because we have a great city here. We have great stories here. And we have to introduce it to the world, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of that.
No, absolutely. And to me, the next step, and this, now you get into issues of personal income taxation. The next step to me has always been to try and figure out a way to attract retirement money. Because in that period of time between retirement and when health becomes an issue, there is, the studies prove demonstrably that university towns, in terms of quality of life and also, quite frankly, life extension, are the finest places on the planet to retire to. You've just got a vibrancy. Boston and Providence are blessed. You've got world-class institutions that provide, well, quite frankly, lectures, concerts, plays, being surrounded by young people.
Philharmonic. I mean, there isn't anything that we don't have. Right. World-class puppets. I mean, food. Just you can go one thing after another, and this is a world-class city.
Right. And so the point being, and then we'll get down to 38 Towers in a second and its potential impact on that. The point being is that the city, if it can overcome some legacy financial issues, which are severe, but if they could overcome that, the city is really at a point where I believe it's in the process of exploding again in a positive manner.
It is, and let me reinforce that, okay? Wexford Science and Technology, which is basically 132,000 square feet, 6 stories, spectacular building. Literally on one side of the brand new, stunningly beautiful pedestrian bridge, okay, is literally about to open. The South Street Landing facility has Brown. It has 3 nursing schools, URI, Rhode Island College. You want to talk about economic engines and the fact that what do the medical community need more than anything else? Nurses. Okay, so we now have PhD programming. We have every form of medical research that is happening right now in the biomed building, the Brown Med School. I mean, Olin can go on and on.
And you forgot the Physician's Assistant School.
Exactly.
At JWU, which is another active. So I always say, I give tours of the jewelry district, and we have JU's physician's assistants, we have the Providence Medical School, we have the nursing schools. So we have all of the specialties, if you will, of the medical profession right there, along with probably a dozen companies that are either established or growing in the medical professional fields. So
Right.
we're really happy with the direction of the jewelry district and, quite frankly, the city. Let me just make a comment, Pat. I happen to be a Facebook addict, and I have to admit it right now. Okay, it's terrible, but
That's where you and I have run into each other.
yeah, that's right, Pat.
Sometimes literally.
Yeah,
When we're pals now.
We're pals. Facebook buddies, we call it.
Yeah.
Well, I have always had an opinion that you have to understand your inside and your outside, and the people outside of Providence have one view of it. You know, my daughter lives in New York City. She raves about Providence.
Right.
The people here, we have sort of a negative view of Providence. We're looking at our inside. Yeah, of course, like any city, we have problems. Maybe they're worse, maybe they're better. But the world sees a different Providence.
Right.
They see some really great things here to do, and they want to come here. So we have to sort of understand the negatives and the positives. From the tourism point of view, we have a big bunch of positive things that we can sell to the world that they want.
Right. No, and statistically, there's an increase in the number of young people seeing Providence as a weekend destination from the New York City area.
Yes.
Tour companies are putting together packages.
And also from Boston.
It's to me, as someone who worked in New York City for 15 plus years, and who lived in Queens for a while and grew up in the New York area, I would compare Providence, if you were to take some of the best parts of the West Village, some of the best at its peak, some of the best parts of Soho at its sort of more egalitarian peak. If you were to take parts of the Upper West Side, to me that would represent exactly what a significant part of Providence was like. And the important part for people who are saying, well, what about the South End and the West End? Well, quite frankly, a lot of the jobs that are going to become available from this have the potential to bring people from the south side of Providence into the employment market, I think for the first time really in generations. And that's not a knock at them, but quite frankly, it's difficult to escape that. If you have to commute somewhere for work, it's difficult to get that first hand up. And so I see, in both an education and tourism, hospitality industry here, there are a tremendous amount of opportunities if in fact the city can simply, number one, understand its identity and retain its identity, stay true to its identity, and B, let's get to work on before it's really too late, on some of the structural financial issues that the city continues to have.
I think it's important to note that the innovation district, as they call it, we call it the jewelry district, of course. We're talking about high paid PhD level jobs.
Right.
But there's almost a pyramid. One PhD needs 5 support staff at the master's levels, and 15 at the college level, and 20 at the high school level. And that kind of job creation really benefits the entire city.
No, absolutely, and Providence, folks are in and around Providence need to be careful, because what you don't want to have is a situation like you have in Boston, where Harvard sees a lot of its expansion, quite frankly, in Brighton and Austin, as opposed to Cambridge proper. I've done some surface looks into what the city of Providence is receiving in terms of its pilot payment in lieu of taxes, because university properties are largely tax exempt. But it's important to note that a significant number of Brown's properties are in fact on the real estate tax rolls.
Correct.
Particularly in the jewelry district. So remember, if they're not used for purely educational reasons, then they are taxed.
Right.
I also want to point out that the South Street Landing, Brown does not own that building. The developer owns that building, so it's still in the tax roll.
Right.
Brown certainly had the wherewithal to do that on their own nickel. But the reality is they left it in the public sector, so it's a full tax-paying property.
Right. And that's, ironically, compare that to the number of properties that both the city and the state of Rhode Island use and are off the tax rolls as a result. To me, is we start to see both I would say not-for-profit use and for-profit use of the 3 downtown universities expand, that's certainly an antidote for feeling like you need to run the Secretary of State's office in the heart of your retail district. It's so the problem is that folks have a tendency to be, you're right, to be bleak. I'm equally guilty of that at times. But at the same time, they also need to be willing to listen. And when I travel a lot, and when I go to other university towns, particularly, and there's an important delineation. There's your undergraduate private university, which can be very, very a welcome addition to any community. And then there's research universities. And the difference here is that of the 3 universities downtown, Brown is actually primarily a research university. Undergraduates, despite what people think, actually are an ancillary part of the Brown mission. RISD continues to expand its graduate programs, and while you wouldn't consider arts to be a research facility, clearly the expansion across the river and the development of the new library, the newish library, and then JWU is what's fun about JWU is they're bringing an entirely different type of student.
Right.
They're a great school academically, but they're bringing in a student who's interested in a lot of the trades.
Sure.
So
Hospitality industry,
Right.
huge. Culinary, huge.
so you mix our reasonable property. I'm a believer that by and large neighborhoods are organic. I'm old enough now to have, as a young person, been in Greenwich Village when it sort of was on its last legs, and the hipsters and the folk scene were long since gone. I was growing up, and in my party days, if you will, when Soho was sort of the bleeding edge of the art scene internationally. It still is,
Yes.
but much more accessible. It was still sort of on that cutting edge. And the meatpacking district, they still packed meat, and artists lived in barely converted lofts, not the $1 million lofts you associate with the New York Times, Sunday edition. This was basically one step above squatting. And Rhode Island is actually, to its credit, going through a longer, more elongated curve on that, which has, I think, kept a lot of the unfortunate sides of gentrification away. It's still, by Northeast standards, a reasonable place to live.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And to give another kudos to our wonderful Providence Warwick Visitors and Convention Bureau, this week Providence is being highlighted in the Washington Post.
Okay.
Thanks to Christina Robio, and just an amazing. We got to preview the article, which is pretty fabulous.
Yes, it is.
Now that's wonderful, because that's what we need. The Washington Post. The last time the Washington Post did a piece on Rhode Island, it was a very unfortunate one on Woonsocket, and it was not good for the state. It was very well reported. It was a fair piece. But the imagery that came out of that piece was tough.
It was negative.
Yeah, very, very
It was
tough.
negative.
Well, you will enjoy this one because it is fabulous.
There you go. So now the question comes up, and by the way, if you're just joining us, we are the Coalition, loud and proud. We're talking about LaProv, the naked city. It's 9 million stories, or is it 1 million stories? Well, I forget.
It's about 580,000 stories.
580,000 stories. I'm gonna use that. 580,000 stories here in the naked city. We're telling one of them. Sharon and Olin are joining us. We're talking about not only the good news, but quite frankly, there's a constant battle to retain a city's identity. Now, I'm a libertarian, so I'm a free market guy, but at the same time, let's not use government funding to be destructive. I've often said that if someone on a free market basis decided to build a 300-story Dubai-like tower in the center of the South End or the West End, God bless America if they were using their own money, because that would bring needed investment into that community. At the same time, we've got an identity. It's a walking city. It's considered a charming city, an older city, and it's a very accessible city. Dropping the Fane Tower, and I like to use a term like a dagger, right into the heart of the district, which is going to be effectively, and they kind of soft pedal this, some pretty crafty, they've hired really some of the best PR people in town, and I say those people are doing their job.
Agreed.
But far less conversation has been had about the taxpayer subsidies of the building than it has about the usual spin associated with any type of new development. You know, there's an association that still exists in Rhode Island. You know, this goes back to sort of the inferiority complex we have that says anybody showing up. Now, yours and my generation, sir, would talk about every boy's got a band. All right, millennials would talk about would talk about a certain Simpsons episode, which I'll show you. You'll get a kick out of. Are you a Simpson kind of guy?
No.
Okay. The constant theme, of course, is crony corporatism using taxpayer dollars to support for-profit industries in the state. So let's talk then about the 38 towers. Where a lot of confusion exists because no one's really. It's a legal process, an extra legal process that is not just your typical go before a board, get a zoning variance, and build it, we will come. And what was it? Hope like hell someone shows up.
Yes.
This involves multiple boards in multiple communities, multiple actually associations. And my take of this is coming out of this is that, and I don't think this is on the lack of anyone from your side of the argument's efforts, but there is still, I believe, a lack of knowledge. How's that? We'll keep it positive. A lack of knowledge about how boards in Providence, how they're structured and why they're structured the way they are as they impact development. So, first of all, where does Fane Towers, 38 Towers stand right now? And tell us a little bit about the boards and everything that are involved in each step of this process.
Okay, so let's do it sort of perhaps in the reverse order. Let's start with the boards and who was responsible for approving where we are now. The I-195 corridor, which sits entirely in the Jewelry District, does not have its own planning staff.
Right.
So they signed an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, such that they would use the City of Providence's planning department to literally provide the planning function. So that means the Downtown Design Review Commission, the CPC, every single.
CPC means what?
You asked me, and it just went
City
right
Planning.
on. City Planning Commission. I'm so
Right.
sorry. I mean, whatever. But all of those planning functions still happen, but they are being done by the City of Providence. Okay? If the I-195 Commission had a fully fleshed out entire organization, then they would do that themselves. So they don't. So there is this understanding memorialized that says they will do it for the I-195 Commission.
And briefly, because we could spend an hour talking about the I-195 Commission. Its
There
history,
you go.
Its challenges, its politicization. What happened there? I mean, there were some good people there. There were some very political people there. That was set up to really be the mover, the shaker.
Economic engine?
Yeah, of that whole. I mean, you think back, the purpose, as I understood of the I-195 land, the federal government essentially spent a significant amount of money, very high, if not close to all of the money, to move I-195. And for folks who haven't been here that long, understand that long strip of greenway in between, as it starts at Wickenden Street and goes all the way up into the center near the center of downtown, that was unusable. That was obliterated. You had, you in order to get to Wickenden, you had to go under the bridge. And by moving the bridge, you accomplished two things. It was purportedly more structurally sound. We've had some issues there, but at the same token, much like what happened on the west side of New York City, you had, or even in Boston, you had the opportunity to have a greenway. You had the opportunity to create something that is really uncreatable. You effectively, they always say there's no real estate. Well, for that one moment in time, there was new real estate.
Exactly.
Uncovered like a gem.
But Olin has a really good perspective on that. So why don't you talk about the difference between Providence and Boston? Because 95 didn't go through Boston.
So one of the objectives back in the 50s of the interstate highway system was to bring the people moving into the suburbs into the businesses downtown. Well, the reality is the reverse happened.
Right.
And most of the cities in America had a period of doldrums, economic doldrums.
Right.
A good example of an exception is Boston, where they stopped 95 from going into the heart of the city. They didn't suffer those economic doldrums because the businesses were still there, people still came in. So we had 195 and 95 going through the heart of our city, and both of them were economic and physical and psychological barriers. So it
Well,
created,
even 6 and 10.
yeah,
It
true.
literally just runs this jagged knife that carved up communities that had become economic entities to themselves for generations.
Well, a good example was I lived there in the Jewelry District when the old 195 was up, and I lived maybe 4 blocks or 3.5 blocks from downtown. Myself and the other people who lived there would get in their car to drive that distance because the psychological effect of that huge barrier. Nothing to say it was going under the underpasses were dismal and dangerous and everything else.
Right.
And this has changed things quite a bit as far as how far away Jewelry District is from downtown. It's now close together, and those resulting lands are phenomenal economic opportunity. What city has that much new property downtown? The answer is almost none.
Right.
So we have a great opportunity there. It takes a while to develop it.
Well,
But
and
still.
folks need to understand that a walking city economically is much more diverse, much more attractive, which is why so many cities started to dive into traffic calming techniques, so that, in a sense, people were able to just move about easily in a more graceful. You know, you think about if you've ever spent time on the Upper West Side or Upper East Side or
Yes.
Soho or Tribeca, the thought of a car, even if you were, say you were in Soho and you were going up to the lower village, you know, it's a solid 20, 25-minute walk. It would never occur to you to take a cab.
Right.
Because there was so much to see and do.
Right.
Very open air, very safe. And you would just, part of the fun would be
Absolutely.
a
Well,
walk up 6th Avenue.
I think that's true. Before I moved to the Jewelry District, I lived on the east side. In Jewelry District or downtown the east side, when I take a walk, I always see something I've never seen before.
Right.
I always say, oh, look at that detail. I've never seen that exciting architectural feature or that little shop. And to me, that's one of the things that drives a walkable city.
Right.
There's these details that you can observe that you can't zip by them in a car and appreciate them.
And a city that is to scale,
Right.
which is a huge issue.
Right. And interestingly enough, it comes full circle. You know, I've been working on my own to get a couple of events into Providence that are political in nature, but all looking for the same thing. And what I've stressed is I've been to conventions in the last couple of years in Orlando and New Orleans. And you think of those as the big convention cities. Well, quite frankly, the hotel stock that supports the conventions is well outside the city.
Yep.
And people are, again, part of the barrier is psychological. All right, I've been on my feet all day.
Yeah.
I'll go upstairs and then I'll pass out and I'll spend $40 on overpriced hotel food. If the city's walkable, when you walk outside of that hotel, and there are everything from a little bistro to a pop-up, art store to you name it, then that's attractive to meeting planners. And a lot of folks don't understand that there's an entire cottage, actually,
Hardly cottage.
Body cottage, yeah.
There's an industry of people who do nothing but planning meetings for other people.
That's right.
Huge
And,
industry.
and that's not only for the Fortune 1000, the trade associations, universities, you name it, alumni organizations.
Yes.
You go down to Jacksonville, Florida, and alumni organizations from the Navy bring in hundreds of thousands of people a year, and the city benefits. So if you are able then to portray to meeting planners, and coming directly from convention bureaus and marketing organizations, the notion that Providence is truly a walking city, that from the Providence Hotel, there are probably 40 or 50 restaurants literally within walking distance from pizza joints and what's the name of that, cheesy fries or whatever that great little French fry joint is, on up
Frisky
to
Fries.
Frisky Fries, thank you. On up to arguably a handful of the finest restaurants on the planet.
Yes.
Correct.
And that, then what you've achieved is that fine balance. It's organic because all of these businesses have popped up because of, well, the environment they're surrounded by, and at the same time, they make themselves available to people who are, we've moved beyond going to the same Holiday Inn every year. Airbnb has lied to the myth that everybody wants to stay in a Sheraton Towers or or fill in the blanks. That everybody needs that sense of sameness, and the bar downstairs have to have the same knickknacks on the left-hand side of the bar, the one we stayed at the night before in some other nameless Midwestern city. And if you come full circle, we have a unique gem here to offer people in other parts of the country who, quite frankly, their lives consist of driving on an interstate, going from exit to exit, and having pretty much the same four businesses.
Yep.
There's a Walmart, there's a fill-in-the-blank regional gas chain, there's a Mickey D's, and there's some sort of chain restaurant, and you can drive 5 miles and get up
There's
the
another
exit.
one.
There's another one. I always marvel from where I sit right here in the heart of Down City. I just marvel at everything that I can walk to in 3 or 4 blocks.
Yes.
So that brings us full circle then to the notion of Fane. What will Fane do? Forget about the economics of it for a second, because that's open to large debate. Forget about process for a second. What does Fane have the capacity to do potentially to a city that's really starting to re-identify itself and may perhaps regain that Renaissance city title?
From a contribution to the city, I see Fane sort of as an island. It's a big, tall island, a lot of rich people, quite frankly, on the top floors and maybe all the way through. It's a closed environment. It hides our beautiful bridge and our park away from the people in the city. So I see it actually as a negative impact on the fabric of the city. It's not encouraging people to walk. It's not encouraging the people to take advantage of the views. Now, I don't see the positive that comes to the city. Its proponents have a list of things that are needed and they think is what should be considered. To me, you struck on a very important thing. What does it do to the fabric of our city? How does it improve our everyday lives in the city? In a city we already have so much. Where is the net value added from the Fane Organization to the city?
There are wonderful, wonderful developers who have come to Providence, and they have played by the rules. They have chosen Providence for all the reasons that we've discussed here tonight, okay? Mr. Fane has the attitude that I'm going to build this and they're going to come, and I don't really give 2 hoots about Providence, okay? I don't care about your rules. I don't care about this provincial place. I want the best place I can put this thing. So it's my park, and it's my bridge, and it's my river, okay? And when someone comes into our city, okay, with that attitude, that pretty much says it all.
Right. And on top of that, there really is no demonstrable proof been offered yet that the building can be.
It's financially feasible.
Right. And we already have.
Something across the street, sort of?
Right, that's unfeasible.
Yeah.
And folks need to understand the financial ramifications of that, what that does to the community. And just as folks need to understand that something eventually will have to happen with the Superman building. I, of course, of the free market variety, that eventually those guys will have to sell it at its current value, and hopefully someone will do something wonderful with it. But at the same token, there isn't a demonstrable chain of success for overpriced condominiums in this city. And if we continue to incentivize overpriced condominiums, then people will continue to build them because there's an artificial, advantage to doing so financially for the short term, because so many of these buildings from out-of-state developers are just sort of pump and dump. They build it, they get the developers' fees, they make some money, and then they're not left with the after effect.
Okay, but you've made some assumptions here. okay? And this is not any development. And this is not like any other development. This is a development that is being driven by, yes, Jason Fane, but by the unions.
Okay.
Period, end of story.
Because
There is one constituency for this project, and that is the unions. From A to Z, and we have a Senate president in Dominic Ruggiero who is hell-bent on making sure that this Fane project happens. He doesn't care two whits about what it's going to do to our city, our pedestrian bridge, our park, and our neighborhood,
Right.
okay? He cares about one thing and one thing only, and that's construction jobs. And you know what? Once that building is built, and by the way, it will never be built, okay? The number of jobs, permanent jobs, literally don't even top out at 50. That's the reality.
Well, and that was the reality why so many people pushed 38 Stadium for the same reason. There was this insatiable need for publicly sponsored construction jobs.
Yes.
And as I said to one union chief, I said, I want you guys to be successful as hell, but if you want to really do it right, it's got to be organic. You've got to have an economic environment where people are demanding, like Boston. We can. There's no reason in the world that we can't be a mini Boston. We can't be better than Boston.
Right.
You know, I spent a lot of time in Boston. I got here. I left East Boston at 3 o'clock this afternoon. I got here at 4 minutes of 6.
Yep.
I had bargained for 2 hours. That's how inured we've become to Boston traffic. All right. I had figured for 2.5 hours. Okay, they'll get me here before 5:30 before we do our sound check. You know, not so much. And do we? Because that's the thing. Do we want to be Boston?
No!
I'm going to chime in on the union thing. I think all of us say union jobs are important. It's part of the economic well-being of the city. Certainly agree with that. There's a couple points. The Fane Tower would provide a bunch of, I think it's a couple hundred or 300 union jobs for like 2 years. We live in the city for the next 100 years.
Right.
So it's not about giving people jobs for now. It's about what's the life of the city for the next 100 years. Okay. The other point on that is that the Fane Tower and its jobs would be, if Fane didn't build, it's not like that's the only game in town. Other developers would love that lot. When Peter Bignali, the executive director until next week, started at 195, he said, that is the most profitable piece of property we have. That's the most desirable. He even said, if we can hold off and sell that as the last piece of property, we'll maximize our
Right.
profit. So that is a very popular parcel. So if Fane goes away, there's someone else go in there and say, I want to build. And I believe firmly that that other developer will say, and I will respect your rules. To me, a lot of this is about respect. You know,
And-
does Fane and Ruggiero respect our city? I say they're not showing that.
And the reality is, every other developer has followed the rules. We just had 5 proposals for parcel 28, okay? We have 2 proposals for parcel 6. We're still working with 2 and 5.
Where's parcel 28 now?
Parcel 28 literally is across the street from 95 Chestnut Street. So it's at the corner of Clifford and Chestnut.
Okay.
It's actually bordered by Friendship, Richmond, Clifford, Chestnut. Big rectangle.
And we had 5 large, successful developers who know what they're doing come there and say, we want to build in Providence, we want to build there, and yes, we'll follow your rules. So the opportunity for developers is here, and they see it. We also have 2 across the river proposals being delivered next week to the I-195 Commission. So you know, it's not like we're lacking developers. I mean, you might be saying, let's move faster, and I personally agree with that. But we have the kind of city that these professional developers want to invest in.
Right.
And had Mr. Fane followed the rules, this would have gone faster. You know, but when you want to and try to put 10 pounds of nails in a 5-pound bag.
That's funny, I never use those words when I talk about it.
Well, since we're in the construction,
she's a polite lady here, so.
construction sort of genre,
Right,
we'll use those terms.
okay. Yeah, it's sad because time lost is irretrievable, and you know, this is time that could have been better spent. Again, developing that property was something that would have added to the community.
Precisely.
You know, and you know, with every passing year, you know, we've got to be wary of economic cycles. The economic cycles that we're in right now is very good, so we need to. But at the same time, I've never quite understood the knee-jerk reaction, and ironically, it very often comes from the conservative side of the aisle. These are jobs, we're going to make money, let's do it, without any considered study of the implications of what we're going to do. And when I hear the language surrounding Fane, it's not dissimilar to something called 38 Studios. This notion that somehow if we just don't do what he wants, he'll leave. I mean, we're so insecure about our city that we're willing to just pretty much sell ourselves to the first person who comes along, the first sailor who shows up and says, you know, and gives us a smile. And that's ridiculous.
Well, maybe some people here are,
Right.
but we're not those people, okay? There is a place that Mr. Fane could have built that building. We can see it right from where we are sitting, okay?
Yeah.
He didn't want to do that. He wants it his way. Well,
Has anyone identified, and you guys might be closer to the number, maybe not, has anyone identified what the teardown it costs?
no.
Superman
Oh,
Super-
I'm not
No,
talking
no.
the Superman building. I'm talking about 110 Westminster
Okay.
that now consists of 2 surface parking lots.
Okay.
That was going to be a W hotel. That was going to be almost as tall as Mr. Fane's Tower of Evil.
But
Interesting.
it's zoned correctly for that.
And it's already zoned.
So what was the,
Doesn't want that one.
That property wasn't developed because that happened at the time of the economic downturn.
Correct.
Right.
So financing went away, which that's a fact of life. So now
Right.
we have parking lot.
has anyone ever, in my household years ago when we had 2 little tots running around, my wife and I would break into a song by Keith and Mick. You can't always get what you want.
Yes.
But if you try real hard.
You get what you need.
So now, where folks, civilians who aren't in, I call us, folks like us are in the bubble. We're paying attention to everything. A lot of folks, quite frankly, they're busy, they have lives, they're just not paying as close attention. So they see city councils voting yes, and they just assume, okay, it's a done deal. Talk about the extra legal nature, if you will, if that's the right word, of the city plan, if you will.
Yep.
What does that? My understanding is that occupies a sort of a specialized legal status.
Correct.
And explain that to us.
Okay, so there is a comprehensive plan. It was 3 years in the making. It only came into being in December of 2014. So it's not like, you know, it's an old comprehensive plan.
Right.
So that comprehensive plan set down a zoning ordinance for the entire city. And it said that, like all wonderful cities around the world, you literally build to scale. So you put when you mass things, you mass them with the shortest buildings close to the river, which is the epicenter. And then you literally work to the outside, which would be where Route 95 is. And that's where you put your height. Okay? So that's what the comprehensive plan said. And thus, the zone that Mr. Fane is trying to operate in, which is parcel 42, the height limit is 100 feet.
And why is that plan so? I'll use the word sacrosanct. Why is that unimpeachable?
That's a state law that says every city and town in the state has to have a comprehensive plan. It's really that town or city's vision for what it wants to be.
Right.
And the law says that a city has to have that vision or comprehensive plan, and zoning has to agree with it. So the comprehensive plan drives what is allowed in zoning.
So in a sense, once this is it largely cast in stone, or what changes are allowed to be made to it or not?
Oh, we could certainly redo the comprehensive plan, and most cities do. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. It's
Right.
not something that is literally there in perpetuity, because it is a document that literally pays attention to the wants and the needs of its citizens.
So can that plan be challenged in court by the Fane Organization?
Can they challenge it in court?
Yeah.
No. The reality is that they are trying to do something that the courts refer to as spot zoning.
Okay.
So it is when literally a single developer chooses a single parcel for a single purpose, okay? That literally is the only rationale for which this person is trying to develop this
Okay.
building at this point in time. So the challenge, we come as literally the plaintiffs, and we say, you are violating our comprehensive plan.
Okay.
The spot zoning it's allowed in a very few situations, and it's really when there's a health and safety issue. So if there's a floodplain thing, we might change.
So there's an exigent reason why.
Yes, yeah, but it has to be for the general public good and usually health and safety. It is important because that one developer, Fane in this case, is getting economic opportunities that the people surrounding them will not have. It's unfair to the surrounding developers. It's unfair to the community because it's not consistent with what the community has said through the comprehensive plan.
And it would
what
also
will
be precedent setting.
Right.
Yeah, the precedent-setting thing was basically once Fane got this change, any developer could come to our city and said, "Joe, I want the same thing, Fane, and I want to put,
What's fair is fair.
yeah, on the south side, I want to put some huge monument, and I don't care what the city or the south side residents say."
Right.
It's not fair. Usually, spot zoning cases are thrown out because it is basically discriminatory towards all the other people
Right.
around it, and it's an unfair economic advantage.
And when they are litigated, generally, when it goes to the Supreme Court, they all lose. So we feel pretty darn good about our position here.
What you didn't say is actually Building Bridges and a few other people have actually filed a lawsuit vis-a-vis spot zoning. We believe that spot zoning is something that has to be overturned, so we took the action to go ahead and file that suit.
And one of the challenges in a lawsuit like that is always standing.
Right?
Your attorneys are comfortable that you have sufficient standing.
Yes.
Our attorneys are comfortable that we have sufficient standing.
Now, the jewelry district, that is, I would call that a quasi? Is it, or what, the jewelry, define the legal structure, if you will, of the jewelry district, the organization that you're involved with.
The jewelry district is literally an association. So we have two pieces of it. We have a foundation piece, and we have the regular 501c3 piece, okay? So most of the associations in the city of Providence, downtown, Fox Point, College Hill, Federal Hill, whatever, are all set up pretty much the same way.
Right.
Building Bridges was created as a not-for-profit organization, and Olin can talk about that.
Yeah, it's important to note Building Bridges is filing the suit. The Jewelry District Association
Is
is not. Building
Okay.
Bridges is not part of the Jewelry District Association. Matter of fact, our board of directors come from around the city.
Okay.
Okay. Building Bridges is about economic development. It's about quality of life. And we tend to concentrate on the 195 area and adjacent neighborhoods. Okay. We were formed really out of the effort to stop the stadium.
Right.
And we advocated against that. Obviously, we won, and that turned into a permanent organization driven by what was happening on 195. It's like,
Right.
here's a great opportunity for economic development for the city. We wanted to make sure we had our say,
Right.
and that's why it was born.
And it was also created literally to be an interface and a liaison with the I-195 Commission, so that, because remember, we have we're in a unique position to literally create a neighborhood that didn't exist. So we get to curate, which is a rare
Yeah.
situation.
Really, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to think of something similar in the Northeast.
Correct.
I mean, effectively, outside of a handful of spots in the Southeast, we are the oldest part of the country.
Yes.
So by and large, families, legacies, companies have really eliminated any real opportunity for that start from scratch kind of movement that you guys. Now, the pedestrian bridge,
Yes.
how is that associated with building bridges, or is that really just a coincidence?
Coincidence, yes
Is
and
not.
no. When we're selecting a name, we were involved in the effort to get the bridge off of dead center.
Right.
People kept talking about it, never really started building it, wasn't
Right.
serious. So one of our members said, well, we want to get building this bridge. And that morphed into the name Building Bridges. Now, it's about that bridge, but it's also building bridges to the economic community, to the quality of life, to the surrounding neighborhood. So we think it's an excellent name that describes our message. We're trying to get everyone together to make rational decisions for what happens to our city.
And the reality is that, as you well know, knowing enough about Providence, if something that is this important does not have an advocate,
Yep.
Doesn't happen.
it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so we came to this position and we decided the bridge needed an advocate because it wasn't getting built.
Right.
Now, we've been involved in this since 2006 from the design competition. So we decided that we would be the advocate. So we are commonly referred to as the founding mothers and fathers of the pedestrian bridge.
There you go. And where does it all stand now?
Well,
The bridge is completed. We've been across it. We're not supposed to be across it, but some people
Yeah.
have been across it. It's been completed for about a month and a half. Rhode really controls that bridge now, and they do not want to open it until the park on the west side of the river is open also, which they're saying is August. And their reason for that is they say it's primarily liability. They want to open both at once. We are urging them to open it sooner because we believe it's such a huge asset to residents, to people who visit our city, and it's really an attractive part of our city.
Right.
And we think it's going to drive a lot of good things in our city.
Well, and two, let's be blunt. The minute you open it, it will become part of city life
Yes.
in a matter of weeks. And as a result, I'm just going to postulate here. Are there some people who, despite its successful construction, don't want that to become part of city life? And
funny
as a
that you should bring that up.
And as a result, feel that. I mean, Rhode, it's funny for folks who are so rooted in the past and who still give directions based on buildings that cease to exist, are so quick to adopt, in a sense, make it their own.
Yes.
And I would imagine within days, you'll see people camped out there. It'll be within weeks. It'll as if it was always there.
Let me
Completely.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Let me be painfully blunt, which is what I'm sort of famous for. We had an unfortunate incident about 3 weeks ago. The bridge was tagged. Fortunately, it wasn't the bridge, it was the abutment on the west side.
Okay.
We have a very active group of graffiti artists.
Excellent.
Okay. So, it took, let's just call it 10 days for people to decide who should file the police report. So the police report is now filed. There has been some white paint put over the tagging. The good news is that the construction company, O'Connell Sons, from Western Massachusetts, is probably one of the finest construction companies I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And I think Olin and Building Bridges and the Jewelry District Association can't say enough wonderful things about it. Dr. Tim Emke, who is part of Building Bridges, literally has chronicled the that building of that bridge from day one, I don't know what number week we are in right now, but he
Hi.
continues to memorialize it,
Right.
okay? So the reality is that that bridge is ready to be opened. It needs to be opened, okay? And we are in the process of urging anyone and everyone who will listen to us that it is time to open the bridge. The walks are done on both sides. They are set off by fencing, okay? We had an architectural historians convention at South Street Landing
Right.
the last weekend in April. We asked for special permission to open the bridge. It was not granted. We had people from all over the world
Right.
attend this conference at South Street Landing. Olin gave a jewelry district tour. I spoke on a panel, okay? People are in awe about Providence and the pedestrian bridge and the park, okay? We need to get this bridge opened tomorrow. Who needs it open? Brown University needs it opened. Why is that? Because they have to get people from one side of the river to the other.
Right?
Brown University employs right now about 2,500 people in the jewelry district. They need that bridge opened. We need that bridge opened. Wexford Science and Technology needs that bridge opened. Okay?
And what better picture postcard opportunity for the bridge than graduation week?
Oh my God, yes.
Right.
When tens of thousands of people descend
all over the world.
Exactly.
descend upon Providence,
Right?
and just driving by that,
Right.
using it.
Yes.
And there are pictures that I'm sure you've seen that have been posted with all of the beautiful lighting. Has the most sophisticated lighting, the most extraordinary surfaces, benches, tables, stunningly beautiful.
So we've only got a couple minutes left, but what can we do? I know this guy was kind of a blabbermouth. What can we do? I assume that folks need to reach out to Mr. Alviti.
Oh, no, much higher than that.
Oh, this needs to go to,
The governor.
The governor.
That's about as high as you can go here.
That's where we're
Yeah.
going. That's where it needs to go.
just take it right out of hands at DOT and say,
Needs to go to the governor.
yeah, because really what the city should be trying to do this week, it's kind of what we're doing at our house. I have a daughter who's graduating from our local school, and this is the week or so that we clean up, we get dressed up, we get the haircut,
Yes.
shave, we mow the lawn, because, you know, I often remark, because of a variety of jobs I am involved in and people I meet, how often alumni, when they come back for reunions and when they come back for graduations, it's interesting to see what their thoughts on the city are as opposed to the city they graduated from. And it would be, again, a hell of an opportunity to really just show off, you know, a resurgent Providence that despite some of the bad headlines on the financial pages, spirit remains untempered and the innovation that comes out of this town remains largely untapped. And there's opportunity for everyone here.
Yes.
And all those people are amazing philanthropists. So need we say more?
No, it's a unique moment in time. We can't squander those unique moments in time because there's lots of other cities that are, you know, I'm convinced, and you folks are, I'm not an expert, I literally play one on the radio, but I'm convinced that one of Rhode Island's advantages is that it was one of the first cities in America to really comprehend, to really grasp the notion that downtown areas are no longer going to be, in this area prospectively, are going to become areas of entertainment. And that two things were important. Number one, to create a welcoming environment for people in a variety of arts-related businesses, restaurant business to come here. And number two, to make it attractive for people to actually live here, which would then draw the kind of services and products you need for people to live because it would be economically fulfilling. And that's the type of economic cycle that's organic and that has the opportunity to last, as opposed to thinking that you can just, Judy Garland would say, let's do a show.
Yes.
It's not that easy. we have the raw material here. We have the clay. So,
What's the most important thing today? Public spaces.
right. People craving them.
I think one of the important things that we're squandering, if you will, is, for example, you used the Brown graduation. We're getting so many people from around the world here who go home and say, I went to Providence. You should see this great city. You see people here who are executives in various companies and say, we should look at Providence. Word of mouth is still the most powerful thing there is,
Right.
and we have thousands of people coming to our cities for these various events where we should be selling the city to them so they can spread the word.
I had coffee at the coffee exchange. I went to North. I went to the Hill and had, went to these 2 or 3 grocery stores, which were unimaginably good, to pick up things for a breakfast that I had, down at this new park on
Correct.
this new bridge.
Yes.
And what's opening across the way? Plant City, the first vegan restaurant in the old 1.25 restaurant.
Oh, something finally going in there.
Yes.
June 11th is the grand opening. Matthew Kenny is the executive chef in Manhattan who has 7 or 8 of these restaurants. Kim Anderson and her husband Froman are opening it. It is extraordinary. It will be a food hall and 4 other restaurants inside. It will be a destination, the only one next to New York.
Do you know anybody who can get me a ticket?
If you play your cards right, we might be able to help you out there.
I'm a Rhode Islander. I'm not above.
We know a guy.
That's great stuff. Well, I want to thank you for coming in again. I'd like to, one of the things as this show has evolved is we're looking to kind of structure the guest appearances more. And clearly, the 2 of you represent, I think, some of the finest, most interesting, most simultaneously most challenging aspects of this city. And this is, as we say in our introduction every week, this is the city we love. So I'd love to, let's talk offline in the next couple of weeks about making it sort of a regular thing. And that means not just you guys, but if there's folks that you want to cycle through and give an opportunity to have this kind of extended conversation. What we're most proud of with our tiny little show here is that I think we give people more of an opportunity to speak and to develop a conversation really than just about any other show in town. We're not subject to the 2-minute sound bites and clearly I'm not influenced by political forces.
We'll even give you a tease.
Yeah?
That there's an important piece of legislation that someone is trying to push, shall we say, to allow Fane to become a reality that is going to impact all 39 municipalities. So I would think that those people would love to hear about this.
Well, let's talk offline about that. Get that to me, and we'll put on our other hat and go to town, go to work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It was great to finally meet you. I know we've had spirited conversations
Yes, we have.
online, but this is testament, I think, to the opportunity that social media provides. It never has to end badly, does it?
Well, to me, social media is a place to understand other people's point of view.
If, in fact, you're a gentleman like you who's willing to take the time to do that, what we need to do in this town, and I guess my last thought for the issue at large is what we opened up with. We have silos, and we've got a lot of miscommunication about not only the project in question, but in general, the future of the city and the potential for the city. And as long as people are not willing to move past those silos, we will, what's the old line? Since we're dating ourselves today, I've seen the enemy and he is us.
Yes.
There you go. Well, folks, we're going to take a quick break right now, and I'd like to thank Sharon and Olin for coming in tonight. This will be available on podcast by tomorrow, and we'll at Spreaker at our new podcast site. Food for thought. And as we usually close out the show, I think it's appropriate right now to say, folks, it's a beautiful night in Providence. It's really one of the first nights of, well, I'll call it near summer. People are walking around in shirt sleeves. They're going from restaurant to restaurant. They're enjoying themselves. Regardless of your economics, there's an opportunity to just have good old fun here in a variety of ways. So let's not miss an opportunity this weekend to support businesses in the capital city and down city, LaProv. And let's get out there and really realize the vision, because it's going to take all of us. It's not just the role of activists. We need all of you to get involved, and if you can't get involved, we'll just come down and spend some money on some really wonderful local businesses. We are the coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the naked city, the city of 560,000 stories. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty, mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the mothership at coalitionradio.us. As always, we'd like to thank the fine folks at Yacht Club Soda, YachtClubBottlingWorks.com, Rhode Island's boutique soda. 100 years before we knew we needed a boutique soda. I published, there's some special flavors. There's a Rhode red that's out that's going to celebrate, if you will, and actually their first caffeinated beverage.
Yes.
Thank God. Wonderful stuff. But when you do this, you rely on this. But please support them. We're getting ready for graduation parties. You're going to spend hours preparing your finest foods, and Rhode Island is such a melting pot. Who knows what that is? You're going to serve great wines, but there's a lot of folks who either need a mixer or just choose not to drink alcohol. Get the very best. Don't get the refinery soda, the stuff in the plastic 55-gallon jugs. YachtClubBottlingWorks.com, available throughout the city, and of course, visit their grocery and their main store in Centerdale. Folks, we'll be right back.